Ladies and gentlemen, we meet here today very, very close to what is the traditional meeting grounds of the Djab Wurrung, the Wurundjeri, the Wadawurrung, the Boonwurrung. This is and always shall be First Nations people's land. My friends, do you remember not so long ago a rally that took place last year, right here? Do you remember what was said then and what I asked you to do? If you don't, I reminded you that the federal election was coming up and that you had the power to change what was going to happen in the live export industry. I talked about petitions, and the only petition that mattered was one that if you went and gathered all of your local people together, if you lived in a marginal seat, and you went into the office of the person holding that seat and told them if they didn't do what you wanted to do, then you would vote them out. That's what I asked you to do. Are you ready for that? Yes! Because on May 18 you have that opportunity. You have the chance to fulfil your promise that you made to that member that you will vote them out if they don't do what you asked them to do, which was to end the evil live export trade. And that's the importance of that timing now. Of you going to every single public forum where all of those candidates are and asking that question, of writing to your local papers and doing the same, of galvanising your communities, of getting everybody together and forcing that change upon them. Because they don't want to change it. They're comfortable. They're making money out of it. They don't want to change, and you can force them to change. You can make a difference to the lives of these animals. This is particularly significant in light of our Prime Minister's recent comments. Scott Morrison and David Littleproud have committed to not only continuing the live export trade, but to expand it, to make it larger. And what's worse is that they want to introduce laws to stop people like you from speaking out against it. They are trying to introduce ag-gag laws by stealth. Not so long ago, the person who's going to be following me up here, an extraordinary human being, Lynn White, was awarded an Order of Australia Medal for exposing the horrors of the live export industry. But instead of holding her up on a pedestal as a shining light of compassion in this country, these two people, this Liberal National Government, would prefer to introduce legislation that would see her locked up for doing exactly what she did. My question to David Littleproud and to Scott Morrison is, have they stood on the docks? Have they watched those animals being loaded on? I have, and I know you have too. How many of them, of their government, have watched every single piece of live export footage? I have, and I know that you have too. I doubt that they have. The hypocrisy of Littleproud, of Henderson, of Morrison, of all of them involved in that government on the live export trade. Their pretense of compassion when there is none within their hearts for these animals. And that is why it's important to have elected representatives in Parliament to bring these issues to the fore. And soon we'll begin to see how that brings results here in Victoria. But we must do the same federally. We must force their hand. Exactly. Margaret Mead said that you should never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Well, you are not a small group. You are large, and you can change government and you can force decisions. You are the 80% of the population of Australia that want to see live export banned. You have the power to put representatives into Parliament to give voice to the issue and to force the change. You are the 80%. In effect, you are the largest union in Australia, made up of all people from all walks of life. You have the power to change the government and the makeup of the Senate so that that decision goes through unimpeded. And the live export trade will finally be a part of history. And I just want to, for a moment again, touch on the difference between policy. How you can affect the change. Clearly, I would like you to vote for the AJP. But if that's not your leaning, then I want you to consider and look at every other party that has a policy on live export. If they don't have a policy to ban it, then put them last. The hypocrisy of the Liberal government has been evident. They have been insincere with the Australian people. And if they cannot be sincere on this issue surrounding the lives of animals in live export, how can they be trusted with things like mental health, homelessness, the NDIS, the National Health System? Take your pick of any policy that requires compassion and understanding for those who are suffering. And the answer is that they cannot be, and they have proven it time and time again. Australians do care. We care about live export. You are the 80%. Make your voice heard at the federal election. Make your voice heard. Change the government. Change the government. Change the Senate. Because that is the only way. Because by having people in the halls of power, the animals will then have a voice. They will have people in there who can force the issue. If they hold the balance of power in the Senate, it's a very powerful position, and they can force the government's hand to get rid of this evil trade once and for all. Thank you.